Everybody, I'm PJ Rosch, and I'm wanting to welcome you back to our podcast for the love of dog, the Little Red Dog podcast, where we talk about rescue and many other things. We have a very special episode. Christine Smith, who is our chief of staff, has joined us. We have had a 3-year hiatus. We're super excited to be back. We're about to celebrate our 13th year of rescue. We've saved over 6,000 dogs. But don't worry, Gary Newcomb and Steve will also be back to answer your dog behavior and training questions. So thank you for listening. I'm PJ Rosch, and with me is Christine Smith. Say hello, Christine.
Hello, everybody. We're glad to be back.
For our first episode back, we thought that we would talk about the challenges of running a rescue. Christine has joined our team, and you have seen her on our podcast before, but she is our president and chief of staff, all rolled into one. But she's a jack of all trades, or I guess a Jill of all trades.
Jill of all trades.
Jill of all trades. So we're going to just talk really quickly, since Christine's been really running the rescue for like the last year and a half. We're going to talk about the challenges of running rescue. So we'll talk about the funding and financial struggles. And so I'll start with that. It's the constant battle of trying to find funding. I think that most people maybe don't realize that nonprofit dog rescues, they think that maybe they're like shelters and they're funded by the government, either the county, city, or state, or whatever. That is not true. We have to raise every penny that we use to feed and care for the dogs. So a big part of our day is trying to find money, trying to save money. And it's been pretty tough, I'm not going to lie, since the pandemic. People, everything opened up, and again, people think that everything's fine, but things have been a lot worse for nonprofits in general, and certainly for dog rescues. There's been a lot more dogs that have been surrendered, a lot more that are being euthanized. In California alone last year, 100,000 dogs were euthanized, again, just in California. And we are number 2 in the country. So that means more dogs were euthanized in Texas because they are number 1. So I want to talk a little bit about really quickly about where donations come from. The majority of our donations come from individual donors, people who support us. So a lot of it comes from our adoption donations, but I can tell you that adoptions have been down for the last 2 years. And but people, donate here. Sometimes we have monthly donors. We've been trying to get sponsors and companies to donate. And again, that's been a little challenging. You have to develop a relationship. It takes a long time. And every day we need money. So, we're going to talk about maybe vet bills or something. Christine, you've been on that side of it for a while.
Yeah, I think the big thing with getting new donors is obviously having people trust us. That they want to know that the money that they're donating is going towards the dogs. And we can show that in everything that we do. The vet bills are extremely high. People sometimes question our adoption fee, but people don't realize how much it actually costs once we take a dog in to get them vetted, to get them spayed or neutered if there's any medical issues. Some dogs come into our rescue that have medical issues that are lifelong. So we're picking up where somebody else neglected them, basically. Trying to identify what the issue is and then caring for the dog. So costs are very high. We're looking up, into thousands of dollars monthly for vet care. We have 3 different vets that we work with. So times 3, it adds up very quickly. We've gotten to a point where our vets want, payment at time of service, where in the old days we could run a bill. Or run a tab, pay that off at the end of the month. But things are evolving. I think other rescues not paying bills affects us. So we see that trickle effect in how our dogs' care is given to them now. But yeah,
it's definitely true. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think that's true. It's like, the vets, it's easy to get mad at the vets, but they're small businesses too, right? So they need to be paid, and it's a challenge sometimes to pay at the end of the month, right? We don't have a lot of staff. Most of our staff is volunteer. So it's not like we're spending money, paying, 10 people. It's like we have one and a half people. And, it's sad. It's because people think, oh, you should just do it for free. Well, then how do you pay your bills if you're working for free? And we did do that for 10 years. We were volunteer only, so it was great. But those days are gone. That's not coming back. I thought maybe you could talk about a couple of maybe like what kinds of vet care that we're having to provide. If we have a senior dog or a dog that gets hit by a car, maybe you can just talk a little bit about those things.
Yeah, if we have a senior dog, most senior dogs are on some sort of medication, either for arthritis. A lot of the dogs right now are on allergy medication. So that's something that's a monthly cost. Senior dogs, we're going to need that blood work every 6 months, depending on what they're on, thyroid medications, liver, just the basic things, ear infections, things that happen out on a walk. They get stung by a bee. We have emergencies.
Well, as a tennis ball.
Yes, I had a tennis ball recently. Thankfully, that came out naturally, up the front, not the back. Um, we have dogs that have gotten into coffee or chocolate, regardless of how careful fosters are, where we get, anytime the phone rings, PJ and I always laugh, anytime the phone rings after 6 p.m., it's an emergency. And
It's going to be bad news for sure.
right. So, I mean, there's always something coming up other than just the basic needs of
Right.
care. We just had a couple dogs that needed TPLO surgery. The aftercare of that, the rechecks at 2 weeks, at 4 weeks, where you're bringing them back in to get X-rays, the pain medication to keep them calm while they're recovering. Because in a perfect world, a dog with TPLO surgery would be in a foster home recovering. But if we don't have fosters, then we have the dogs in boarding, and we're doing our best to keep them calm and keep their brains active while they're recovering. That's a 12-week recovery. As people know, I mean, it's a pretty common surgery. That's one of the hardest surgeries to get through in a home. So imagine trying to do it in a boarding facility.
Right. And yeah, you kind of touched on like allergy medication, but a lot of our dogs do have allergies or have sensitivities. So we have to have specialty foods.
Right.
That's usually like $125 a bag. And what people don't realize, a lot of times for specialty surgeries, we have to go further away. It's not like our local vets that do that. And so we have to pay people to transport because we don't always have volunteers during the day when people are working to like jump in a car and take the dog to the vet. So it all kind of adds up. We have done a lot of things. I mean, if people are listening, you probably know us, but we've done a lot of like new things. Like during the pandemic, we did a couple of telethons to raise money. We're always trying to be creative in the way that we raise money and not spend a lot of money trying to raise money. At galas. Galas, are fun. They're a good party, but it costs a lot to have a gala. So we're trying to really control those expenses, but still raise money to feed and care for the dogs.
And it's difficult right now too. I was just posting recently about needing dog food. Well, here we are in the middle of trying to recoup. People are helping the victims of Hurricane Helene. There's so many people asking for help right now, and people have to decide. I have $25 extra this month. Who am I going to give it to? So it's hard
That's an
asking for
excellent
stuff like
point.
dog food, which is very important for us. Our dogs need to eat. We try to
Right.
give them as good quality food as we can. Obviously, we're not going with the best food, but we're not feeding the worst food. But having to ask for daily needs when something like Helene is going on, it's difficult. We have to constantly remind ourselves we're not asking for ourselves, like PJ always says. Everything we ask for is for the dogs. We want the best for the dogs.
Oh, that's a really good point. And I think that just in general, people are hurting economy. It's kind of a tale of two economies. Like it seems like it's good, right? Unemployment's down, the stock market is good, but at any given moment, people might be losing their houses, or they might be laid off, or like I said, they don't have a lot of extra money because everything is so expensive.
Mhm.
So um, not to be beating that in, but I think it is a really important point, and I think that too, we don't get any government funding at all. It's not like the County of Orange is giving us anything. We do apply for grants. People always say, "Oh, just apply for grants," and we do, but animal welfare is the least funded, nonprofit in grant management, and the competition is fierce. And I mean, I spend days and hours and everything trying to like put in grants and make it, "Hey, we really need this." And we get turned down, I mean, way more often, probably 99% of the time than we get the grants. So it's not like there's other funding.
I was just going to say with the grants, like nothing is immediate. It's such a long process. Once you submit the application, you don't get a response right away, or you have to wait until the cycle where they are accepting applications. So it's not a year round thing where you can apply. You have to wait until that application period is open, fill out this lengthy application, and then you sit and wait. So even if you,
Yeah, sometimes a year.
yeah,
I mean, sometimes it's literally a year later you hear whether or not you got the grant. Most time you
yeah,
don't. And you can't just sit around waiting for a year to feed the dogs, right?
right.
That's not. Anyway,
And you
I
end
know
up
it's
getting
kind of
grant,
a
then
but
you're waiting to receive the funding.
right. 'Cause, even if you get approved, it doesn't come the next day. So anyway, I know we kind of beat that in, but I think it's really important for people to understand because I don't think, I mean, we live it and breathe it. So I don't think the average Joe really understands, what it takes. But I want to switch gears just a little bit and then maybe you can talk about kind of volunteer management. We do heavily rely on volunteers. Part of those are fosters, right, to care for our dogs.
Right.
We have 92 dogs in our rescue right now, as of today. Um, I think 43 or 45 to 45 are at the facility that we have, which has its own challenge we can talk about. But the rest are in foster. But we still have to provide vet care, food, other supplies, and have people who don't give up. So, do you want to talk a little bit about the challenges of volunteer management?
Yeah, I think a lot of people hesitate to volunteer. I mean, there's many different ways people can volunteer. You can volunteer to walk dogs. You can volunteer to transport dogs to vet appointments. You can volunteer to foster. Like PJ was saying, our biggest need right now is fosters. And I think a lot of people don't realize what's involved in fostering. So they hesitate. They may be interested in it, but they don't realize, fostering is free, which is a huge thing. People don't realize that we provide food, we provide the medical care. Basically, all we ask of them is to set the dog up for success, show the dog a routine, set boundaries, and we work with it. I mean, we have people here that will help guide you along the way. So fostering is such a rewarding experience. The one thing I hear a lot from people is they're worried about getting attached to a dog, and so they hesitate, thinking that they're going to get heartbroken or they're not going to be able to let the dog go. And I feel like if you go through the process at least once of fostering a dog and watching that dog go into its forever home, you will realize I can keep doing this because look how happy that dog is. And that's the goal. The goal is not about us and, how it affects us personally. The goal is how it affects the dog. Um, we do get a lot of applications for dog walkers. Um, People do have to sign up for a clinic to learn to walk dogs, which some people are some people don't like that they have to do the clinic, but I think once you do the clinic, you realize, wow, this was really helpful because I may have been able to walk a 20-pound dog, but can I walk a 60-pound pit bull who may be reactive to other dogs? And our big thing is we want the dogs to be safe. We want the people to be safe. So the walking clinic is critical to being a successful volunteer. Um, we have people that come once or twice. They may never show up again. And you know, it, it happens. Life gets busy. But we really need those people that are dedicated to be regular dog walkers. Spending the time to come and do the clinic and do one or two walks it's not really benefiting the dogs. It's causing more work on our staff to have to pick up the slack. Volunteering in a whole, that's how I got started in rescue, was volunteering in a shelter. And, a lot of people think it's hard to see the dogs in kennels. Yes, it's hard, but you're getting them so much by getting them out. And that's the rewarding part is being part of just giving them some stimulation and they need that.
Yeah, I think I just want to kind of touch on a point that right there. Yeah, it is sad to sometimes to see the dogs in kennels. We want every dog in a home, and I believe there is a home for every dog, but sometimes it takes a long time. And to Christine's point, if you can't get past seeing them in a kennel, but if you got there and saw them in a kennel, you get to take them out. You get to walk them. They get some, you get to know them. They get some enrichment. They get to
Mhm.
get out and have their feet in the grass and they get to have fresh air and and it's good for them. They need that. And to me, that outweighs the sadness part. And the same thing with fostering. I'm a terrible foster because I do want to keep all the dogs that I have. I do get attached. It is hard to watch the dogs go, but if I don't foster, then that dog will die. It doesn't even have a chance. It doesn't come out of the shelter. It's going to be euthanized. So is it really that bad that you get attached and feel sad for a little while? Um, but you save the dog's life? I don't know. I think saving the dog's life is worth it, whether it makes you sad or, you know, whatever. The downside to me of whether you're sad or whatever is not as bad as the downside of them not having a foster because they're likely not going to get out alive, frankly. So I think that's a big part. I think that's people don't realize that they think they maybe there's these magical people that don't have any feelings that they can see the dogs in the kennels or can let the dog go after fostering, and they're not that person. And we all feel that way. No one wants to let the dog go because you've put a lot of time, invest a lot of time and affection and love in it. But if you don't do that, the dog will not live. It will not get out of the shelter. And I'll tell you right now, there are so many dogs in the shelter. In every shelter I know of, there's like 3 or 4 dogs in the kennel, every kennel, which is dangerous for the dogs during feeding. It's dangerous for the staff, because you just never know. Even a great dog can have a bad day, right? And not want you next to its bowl or another dog next to its bowl. So I think that's the thing that, it's crisis right now. It's a terrible time to be a dog. In fact, when I mentioned that California euthanized 100,000 dogs last year in the shelters, it's the very first time ever that they euthanized more dogs than cats. So again, it's a crisis, and we do need volunteers. And to Christine's point, a lot of times people will come to the dog walking clinic, and we never see them again. So we wasted that time, training them. And I know that people think, "Oh, I know how to walk a dog." It's not hard, but it's not as easy. There's the things that you have to do. You want to keep the dog next to you or behind you because that sets you up as a pack leader. It sets a dog up for success. So it's not thinking on its own and making stupid mistakes. So again, there's a lot that goes into it. And we don't mind working with anybody. But if you just come once or you never show up after the dog walking clinic, it's a big waste of our time. And I think that's another thing that frustrates me is that apparently people don't mind wasting the nonprofit's time. And I think that's really sad because again, a lot of us are working for free and you're still wasting our time where I could be doing other things, applying for more grants or trying to get more sponsorships. So I feel like I'm sounding complaining and I don't really mean to. I'm just really trying to give the order of magnitude of the problem that we're facing now. It's always been bad. It is crisis right now. So um, part of that is, look, just kind of transitioning into the dog rescue logistics, there's a lot that goes into that. I mean, we have to determine if it's a dog we can pull, right? We pull it from the shelter. Do we have a foster? If not, do we have room at the facility? um, what's the behavioral needs, what's the medical needs. We have to put them into our system, we have to get them vet care. There's just a lot of things that goes into that, and a lot of dogs we rescue are seniors, our medical dogs, our behavioral dogs, and most rescues don't want to take them, and I get it. It takes longer to get them adopted. It's hard. Often we take medical dogs and they don't make it, and not because of anything we're doing. They're just so, as Christine said, they've been neglected for so long that the care that we put into them, it's too late. It's too little, too late at that point. So again, there's a lot of things there, and then you have to find it a home, right? And I've said this before in the podcast. People don't listen. we have a 30-day protocol. We tell them to do this. And 2 days later, one of the things is the dog should be in its place, not on the couch next to you. You can eventually do that, but not right away. And then 2 days later, we get a picture of the dog on the couch. And then when the dog gets like grumpy because it's protecting its human or the couch, we get the dog back. And it's so frustrating because if you talk to any trainers who work with adopting dogs, they'll tell you all the time people don't listen. And that's to me one of the most frustrating things. And I don't know if you have anything to add to that, the whole logistic part of the dog rescue.
I mean, we see it on our applications all the time, and we have a list of questions that we ask, and 99% of people check the box that they would never return a dog. And the reasons that they want come back to us to return a dog are so correctable. And it's really shocking how committed they are when we're talking to them. Um, and this obviously isn't everybody because we adopt out to a lot of great people, but um, the people that do say that they're willing to do anything, and then the little slightest thing, an accident in the house, or chewing on something, and it's all preventable things where if you do follow our protocol, these things won't happen. And PJ's been doing this for 13 years. She's learned by experience, and so I mean that's, to me, that's golden. I would much rather learn by somebody with experience than, look up something online or open a book.
It's funny because I have that, whenever we have a new volunteer, and their eyes are just they have rose colored glasses on and they think everybody's wonderful. Everybody should have a dog. And sure, that'd be great. But not everybody should have a dog because to Christine's point, not everybody's willing to put in the work. And it's funny because I'll have arguments sometimes with the volunteers and they'll want to adopt this dog to this person. And I really feel like the amazing Kreskin at this point where I can see into the future. I'm like, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, and the dog's going to come back. And when I acquiesce and I allow that to happen, even though against my better judgment, we always get the dog back. It always unfolds the way I think it's going to. I should say it, not always. It's very rare that it doesn't unfold that way. And it's just because it's not because I'm brilliant, although I am. It's because I have been doing this for 13 years and I've taught to everybody. And I had those rose colored glasses on too when we first started. I mean, I remember we had this first adoption event and this woman was all excited over these puppies that we had. And she walked up, and at the time, I think we were only charging $250 for our adoption donation. Again, that covered the spay, the neuter, all of the vaccinations, a microchip, any, dewormer, flea meds, all that, which is much more, it would be much more expensive for you to do that on your own. And she looked at me and said, well, I only have $30. like, I'm going to wait and see if anybody else wants to adopt the dog. Let's see. Let's just have to see what happens. We did adopt those dogs. And ironically, that woman a few months later tried to surrender her dog to us. And I was just like, you wanted to adopt a puppy and now you're giving me your dog back. And I think it is easy sometimes to think people suck, and they do. Sorry, but sometimes people hit hard times and they really do need help. And those people I never mind helping, but it's the people who just don't want to be inconvenienced or they didn't think ahead or plan ahead or whatever.
Right.
Those are the people that I just get really frustrated with. So
Yeah.
it tends to make you a little bitter after all these years. But again, the thing I always say, I'm always disheartened by the things I've seen, the people that I have to deal with sometimes. But every day I find a little spark because there's somebody who does something extra or takes the time. And I think that's the part that you go, okay, it's not hopeless. There are people out there who will listen, who will try, who will give it their all. And those are the people that, that's our community. That's the people that we want to be around because saving dogs is hard, and just kind of going into, as a segue, you know, I don't think people understand that in nonprofits, the physical and the emotional demands, there's a lot of talk about mental well-being and mental health. And it's a lot of people are leaving nonprofit, not just dog rescue, but nonprofits in general, because, there's not enough money. There's so many people in need, right? And it just takes a toll on you. Like it just can't not take a toll on you. And I don't know if that's something you want to jump in on and talk about that. I'm sure you've experienced that too, because I know we overwork you.
Well, we're all overworked, but we do it because we're passionate about it. It doesn't feel like work, even though it is work, but rescue burnout is a real thing. I'd heard about it before I really got involved in rescue when I was just, volunteering, walking dogs in the shelters and things. But you really do have to step away for a little bit and still have something of your own, because when you get involved in rescue, it's all encompassing. I mean, like I said, we have to be there 24/7 for emergencies. 11 o'clock at night. You're out at a event and your phone rings. You just and we all cover each other. I mean, if somebody can't get a hold of one person, there's always somebody else, and we're great about communicating with each other. Where if we're not going to be available at a certain time, there's always somebody that is available. But I do think it's really important that we each have a little bit of carved out time during the day for ourselves, just to stay grounded and stay mentally and physically able to be continue doing what we're doing. There's so many things that can fall through the cracks, that especially with the medical side of things, keeping up with um, medical records and just the medical care, that if you're not on your game, something can get missed that's really important. So personally, I I have my little routine every week where I do have like a little bit Fridays that I do something a little bit special with my own dog, where I'll spend a little bit more time on a walk, go someplace different instead of just the neighborhood. And we really enjoy looking forward to that day every week.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I feel the same way. Like I get up, I walk my dogs, my dogs and my foster dogs every morning, and it is work, but I actually do enjoy it because it starts my day. No one else is with me. I don't. I'm in my head. Yeah, I'm outside. I get to just think things through. Sometimes I'm thinking obviously about the rescue and things I need to do, but sometimes I'm just, just taking time for myself and I don't mind it. And for me, it's fun. Like we go into the tennis courts. I know we're not supposed to be going to tennis courts. We throw the ball and because they're all safe now, they don't run away and I can't, nobody can get in. And it's fun to watch them like Nigel, my little guy. He just loves to run. It's one of his favorite things. And so it brings me joy to do that, even though I'm still working with dogs. It's still something that I do that I like and I enjoy, and that it does help. But to Christine's point, even if you have like a cocktail at night and then the phone rings and you're like, "Hey, this is not going to be good news. This person never calls me." If it, so it's bad news. But
Right.
you know, it's the good with the bad. I do think you should, there's a lot of resources out there. People will offer meditation and things like that. And I know it sounds, I used to be like meditation, whatever, but honestly, that does help or whatever. Exercise, taking 5 minutes to yourself, whatever, closing the door and like just turning off all social media and your television, whatever, and just having like that time to yourself. I really think it helps. And I think it's important. And otherwise, people do burn out, they leave. And it's sad because they were passionate about what they were doing. So, and some people might be wondering, well, what the hell are you doing this for? It sounds terrible. But the one thing that I think, and I kind of touched on this just a bit ago, I find joy in when we take a dog that's so broken or so, so neglected. We had this one several years ago, and they said it was a Yorkie, and it didn't even look like a Yorkie. It was just, it was had so many medical problems, and we had one of our volunteers decided to foster her. And this old dog's name was Edna, and she said she ended up adopting Edna. That does happen when you foster. Often you end up with a dog. Um, and because of us, we got the dog nurse back to health, and then she continued that. Laura continued that, and that actually did was a Yorkie, and she did look like a Yorkie, and she lived for like another 5 or 6 years, and she had a happy life and wonderful. And she just passed recently, but she would have died in the shelter looking like this, I don't know, rat, really is what she looked like when we first got her. And she had this happy life. Another one was Turbo. And you guys have probably heard us talk about that. But this little guy was 4 months old, hit by a car, paralyzed back legs. And we went through a lot of medical with that dog. Um, but he was the best dog. We had so many vets tell us to put him to sleep because he had a lot of struggles, and he has the best life. He has the best forever family. They take him to the dog beach. He's very dog friendly. He loves, the thing I saw him, he was like dragging his legs at the shelter, but he was still playing with a ball. It was very sweet. And now he gets to run around his little, he has wheels and gets to run around. He gets to do a lot of things. And he wouldn't have that if it wasn't for us and our fosters and our are volunteers. And so that's what keeps me going. And again, I don't know if you want to talk about any of that because I know you've certainly been, in some of these rescues with us now and after the last year and a half.
Yeah, I mean, we get very attached to the rescues. As soon as they come in, they become family to us when they're going through hardships. Obviously, it's not quite as close as if it was your own dog, but we know that they only have us to rely on. So we want to fill them with as much comfort and security as we can. A lot of us, like myself, who are working more from home than with the dogs, interacting with the dogs. I don't have that one on one connection, but their story, I get connected to their stories. I know that you were just touching base on a couple of dogs, but one that sticks with me when you were talking about people wanting to surrender their dogs. We have a dog named Chloe whose family became homeless and they didn't know what to do with her. They were living in a car with a teenage daughter, husband and wife, and a dog. They reached out for help because they didn't want to surrender their dog to the shelter because they knew what would happen. She was a little pitty who was beautiful and sweet, and thankfully we were able to help take her in and keep her until the family was able to secure housing, which I want to say it was at least 6 months. It wasn't a short
Okay.
period. Um, but the process that they had to go through, checking in on her regularly to make sure that she was doing okay, we were able to get her spayed and vaccinated and get her up to date on everything because they clearly couldn't afford to because of their situation. And we were, made sure that they secured a place, that they didn't just tell us that they had found a house. They showed us a signed lease. They were very looking forward to bringing their dog back home into their family. And we had a little party when they came to pick her up because they hadn't seen her in 6 months, and those kind of things, in addition to rescuing dogs from the shelter, obviously, but just seeing what that family had gone through and their commitment to their dogs. That's one that really sticks with me, and just remembering how happy they were to see her, and her them too, obviously.
Definitely. And again, that's things that keep you going. I mean, we could talk for another 3 hours
Yeah.
about all of the dogs and probably will at some point, but because we are celebrating our 13th year this month and it's exciting for us and we're happy. And I hear my dogs barking. And no, but I mean that is what that makes all of the criticism, all of the financial burden and strain, all of the work and everything that we put into it, the emotional and physical demands we talked about, all of those things, trying to raise money, all of the things we talked about. Chloe's story, Turbo, Edna, and so many others. We've rescued over 6,000 dogs. So we have a lot of stories, and that's what keeps you going no matter what. And I'll be honest, it's like that to me, it's like a drug. I mean, I've never taken heroin, but rescuing dogs is the best drug in the world. I mean, it's better than anything I know. It makes you feel good. It's addictive because you get to, you want to rescue more. And so the only way we can do that is by raising more money, by raising funds, and we will continue to keep trying that. But that is what keeps us going. And I'm excited to have Christine on the team. She's really been a great, a great addition to our team. So thank you for being here with me on this first podcast back in a very long time and for sharing your stories.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to more.
And yeah, me too. All right. Everybody have a great day and thank you for joining for the love of dogs.
Thank you.